Well, good morning. It's another day, and I have to say that I've had better starts to the day. I feel like I've got the hips of a 100-year-old. My hips just have not been good all week. They're not as bad as they were, I have to say, but they're not good. I had a phone call from the swimming pool just to let me know that they use special steps for people like me, so that we can get in and out of the pool, and because of something or other that they're going to be doing, they won't be available from tomorrow until next Wednesday. So basically I can't swim because the hoist isn't available either, and I just can't do the vertical steps. There's just no way. I can get into the pool, no trouble, I just fall in, or jump in. Getting in is never a problem, it's getting out. And after I've done my swim, I wouldn't be able to get up those vertical steps. Well, I wouldn't be able to get up those vertical steps even without my swim. So, anyway, you quite often hear people talking about justice, particularly politicians, and particularly people who, well, just people in general, really. And to me, what they really mean is vengeance. Because I've never heard anybody talk about justice in a way that wasn't really just a posh word for revenge. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that there are people that need to be put in prison and kept there because they're a danger to other people, like children, for instance. And if you abuse a child sexually, if you're a paedophile, then really you need to be kept away permanently. There shouldn't be any release, in my opinion. But not because I hate them, and not because I want to see them suffer. In fact, far from it. I certainly wouldn't want them to put in sort of a dungeon of torture for the rest of their life, because that brings us down. No, I think they just need to be kept away from the general population, and I don't see why their living accommodation shouldn't be good, and they ought to be treated well, and they certainly should be offered therapy. However, I don't think we can ever safely say that they wouldn't abuse again. Obviously, for those of you that know me, I experienced a lot of violence and sexual abuse as I was growing up. And so I've had a lot of time to think about justice. And the conclusion I came to was that there was absolutely nothing that could be done to alter what I went through, or that would make what I went through okay, or would make it any better. And I certainly don't think there's anything that could be done to the people who hurt me, either, that wouldn't degrade either me or other people. See, this idea of justice, or some people call it karma. Now, of course, what they never think about when they talk about karma, and people say to me, oh, don't worry, they'll get theirs in the next life. Well, that sort of implies that I got mine in this life, doesn't it? Doesn't it suggest that I went through what I went through as some form of punishment for previous deeds in a previous life? So I actually quite find the idea that you think that my abusers will get punished in the next life rather offensive, and also rather pointless. And I'll tell you why it's pointless and why it makes absolutely no sense. Perhaps I could do to my abuser what he did to me, but he's a completely different person from me, so he would react differently. never mind the effect that that would have on me. Doing that, I wouldn't, and I couldn't, but let's just say for a moment I could. I mean, that would, one, turn me into them, or at least my behaviour would be the same, but internally I'm not the same, and they're not internally the same as me. And so the abuse wouldn't affect them in exactly the same way. The only person that I regret that nothing was done about was the teacher I had, who was a child pornographer, and I of course was his star pupil. And back in the 90s I got a phone call from the British police because they'd had contact from Australian police about this. Oh, because I'd contacted a newspaper, because that's all I could remember, the person that worked at a newspaper in the little Australian town that I used to live in, and I contacted them asking about this person. Anyway, and the next thing I knew, I was getting a phone call from the British police, and it didn't go too well at first because they asked me by my previous name. I changed my name by default. I changed my name when I was about 18. And not to disassociate myself from my family, I just couldn't stand the name. It made me cringe every time I heard it. And I'd been like that all through school. I really just hated my surname. So I changed it. Anyway, so I had to go for an interview with the police, which was awful. I had to go into detail about what this man did, and I'd never ever done that before. I had only just started to do it with a therapist, and even now the only person who knows the details of what happened to me when I was a child is my therapist. Nobody else, not even John. John has a general idea, and he of course has seen the effects, but he doesn't know, and he'll never know because there's no need for him to know. There's no need for anybody to know. But anyway, I had to with this policeman, which was very uncomfortable, to say the least. It was humiliating and really quite unpleasant, and I felt that the policeman felt exactly the same. He felt quite disgusted by the whole thing. Anyhow, at the end I was told that I wouldn't be called as a witness, and basically there was no case because I'd had psychiatric treatment and the courts would not consider me a viable witness. So basically, if you abuse somebody, make sure that you fuck them over good and proper, because if they have a nervous breakdown or have psychiatric treatment at any point, you'll get away with it. But anyhow, the whole point about him really was just to make sure that he wasn't still doing this. And I have absolutely no idea if he is or isn't. He'd be old now, really old, because he was quite a lot older than me. I reckon he was at least 30 years older than me. So that would put him in his 80s now. He could well be dead. But anyway, there's nothing I can do about that. But you see, there's no vengeance I could have on him either. Why would I want to? But what vengeance is there? Have him as a pupil in my next life and become a child pornographer? I mean, that's just outrageously stupid, as well as wicked.